Welcome to Espiritu Coffee Chats. I'm Valerie, co-founder of Surge Coffee Co., a specialty coffee business rooted in culture, community, and connection.
And I'm Arlene, founder of Lunasoul Wellness, where I guide people through holistic interior design, astrology, human design, and spiritual alignment.
Before every episode, we start with a cacao ritual, a moment to slow down, connect, and pour into ourselves before diving into deep conversations.
This podcast is our space to explore herbalism, spirituality, entrepreneurship, and the everyday magic of being Latinas navigating life on our own terms.
So grab your cafecito or your cacao and join us for real talk, soul connections, and a little bit of magic along the way.
Enjoy.
Hello. Welcome back to the podcast.
Yes, welcome back. It is a fun sunny day here in San Diego.
Yes, spring equinox is right around the corner.
Valerie's birthday.
It's Pisces season.
Yay. May all your dreams and wishes come true season.
Yes. Thanks. Happy hippie season.
Love it. Okay, so today we have a pretty fun episode that we're excited to talk about. It's going to be focusing around defining Latina empowerment, connecting with your cultural roots, and honoring your heritage in this modern day, because we know that we all have, we all have our Latina backgrounds, but I think bringing it out in a modern way is something that would be great to share. Practices and stuff.
Yes. So my background is I was born here, but both of my parents are from Mexico. So we are Mexican. I like to say we're Mexican American is how I explain it.
Yeah, both my parents were born here. So I am second generation. And my grandparents were born in Mexico. One was born in Nicaragua. And then one grandparent was actually born here in the United States in
nice.
San Luis Obispo.
Ooh, I love SLO. That's a great place.
Yeah, he's the straight Spaniard grandpa. Blue hair, blue eyes. Yeah, I mean, he has to be like super. But I think his mom was, which is my great grandma, was from Mexico.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We also have blonde hair, blue eyed in our family, which is, that OG Spanish.
Yep. Yeah. My mom actually has like 70% Spaniard in her 23andMe DNA.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah,
I've never done it.
We're like, oh, that's from Tata. That's for sure.
Nice. I love it.
Yeah.
So as we dive into this episode, let's define Latina empowerment to each of us.
Yeah, I like that. You want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. For me, I think it's proud of being who you are in your cultural identity, and however that takes shape or form in current life. And so for me, when my parents, they moved here, immigrated here pretty young still. Mm-hmm. So they assimilated to the culture here a little bit more, especially being business owners. And for me, I had to explore a little bit more of our culture because we had that mix. And so for me, Latina empowerment is bringing honor to our culture, our traditions through food, through celebrations, through beverage, and through community. I think for me, growing up and going through life and kind of being in more of these male-dominated, white-dominated spaces, I didn't really feel like fully myself. I wasn't able to show my full identity. And so when I enter these other spaces that are a little bit more culturally competent, even if they're not Latino spaces, then I feel like I'd like a sunflower, and I can just shine bright and speak my broken Spanglish and enjoy my tamales and all the spices and the chilies that come with it. And yeah, I think recognizing that in our culture too, we have this almost like this grit and tenacity of pushing through so many things. And yeah, just letting that play out in your life and being proud of it. So that's what Latina empowerment means to me.
Oh, I love that. I love that you said the sunflower, because I believe that is one of Mexico's flowers.
Ooh, Nice. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So I guess for me, I feel like because I am second generation, there was this bigger detachment from the actual the roots of Mexico, or even my grandma from Nicaragua. She didn't really talk about her experiences in Nicaragua. So I still don't really understand. Like, I know right before she passed away, I was able to sit down and talk to her, and she spoke English, but she would also revert back to speaking Spanish. So sometimes I'm like, well, there goes that. But it was cool to hear her story and how she came to the United States so young. She was like 15. The country that she came from in Nicaragua was war torn, and her father ended up, they still don't know what happened to him. He went off one day to go to war and never came back. So that was like, wow. Just thinking, she was 15 years old. She left. Her mom didn't want her to come to the United States.
Oh, wow.
And she got on a Pan Am airline and flew to the United States, 15 years old, by herself to go live with her uncle who was in New Orleans. So that was like really interesting. And I was like, oh, see, I wish like I knew all that stuff like when I was a little younger. But again, I don't know if I would have like really appreciated it that much.
True.
Just to be able to talk to her more, I think that's something that was harder for me to connect with my culture, because there was this barrier of not being able to speak Spanish. So I can't even speak Spanglish. I know cuss words, and I know moco and taquitos. Yeah, like I could roll my R's, but and I understand probably about 60% of Spanish. I just can't speak it back. So for me, Latina empowerment was like, what is it to? I always felt like I couldn't, really be like raw because I didn't speak Spanish and all that stuff. So I felt like kind of insecure about that growing up, like really insecure actually. But now I'm like, no, screw that. Even though I can't speak it, doesn't mean that I can't embrace the language or embrace my heritage and my culture. And we still did like things like made tamales every year, ate the food. And my grandma had this great rice that she would make from Nicaragua. It was so good. Ooh. I had like capers, and I don't know what it's called in Nicaragua. I still don't. So if anybody here is Nicoya and you know about this rice that has capers with shredded chicken, and it's like red.
Ooh.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And then, so my mom and dad, they grew up speaking Spanish, but they just didn't teach us. So, because they got made fun of by all the white kids. So that's why.
Different times back then.
Different times. They grew up in the 60s and 70s. So once the 80s rolled around, they were like, okay, let's raise our children to be a little more American so they don't feel what we have to feel. But I think for me, now that where I'm at and I'm raising my kids, Latina empowerment means that you step into a room and you're so proud of who you are. You're proud of your skin color. You're proud of the way you look. You're proud of your accent. If you have one, you're proud of maybe not having an accent and you're Spanglish. Like, you're just proud to be your own, express your own authenticity in that Latina way. And like, I love seeing when people wear the traditional like embroidered shirts.
Ooh, yes.
And like the detailed earrings, or even being like that little 90s chola look. I'm like, yes, copy paste Latina. Like, our culture it's like the lowriders, it's the music, it's the banda, it's the salsa, it's the cumbias, it's Selena. There's all these things. And so even though I didn't get to speak the language, I still feel like, nah, I'm part of this culture, and I've did it in a way that I think that the generations going forward are going to express it, because it's like that second, third, fourth generation, they know that they have this Latina background in them, maybe, or ancestry or culture, but they're not like necessarily that first generation that comes and actually had to put roots here in the United States. And then I have very successful aunts. So it's just seeing them pave the way and allowing them to pave that path and have that be successful and what that looks like, starting from education level to higher ranking levels, and even just being a good mom. Like, you don't always have to be this successful Latina woman who has this CEO position or your own, you own your own business, but you can even just be a powerful woman by being a matriarch and holding on to those core Latina roots and the heritage that we still have in our blood.
Yeah, I love that you said that. The like matriarch portion of it, I think, really hit me, because there have been instances where there's like women in my life, maybe they don't have kids, but they are that matriarchal like position. Like they bring you in and make you feel like one of their own, and they take care of you, and they're always asking about you. And yeah, going back to that Latinidad, like always caring for our families, for our community, our neighbors.
Right. Yeah, and you're seeing this rising up of the Los No Sabos kids, right?
Yes.
And it's, hey, we want to be a part of this too, even though we're still trying to find our cultural roots. We're still trying to step back into learning more about our history and stuff starting to come up even more as in before where it wasn't. Or taking trips. Like I love taking trips to Mexico. Fortunately, my mom's parents, they retired in Mexico and Ensenada. So I did get to spend a lot of time in like Baja California. So that made me feel like, okay, like I know a little more. Like, I know all the Mexican markets and Gigante and the gas stations and all the candy, all that stuff. So I just walked around not speaking any Spanish, but I definitely soaked it all in. Like I soaked in the culture, the food, the way that people interacted with each other. Yeah. And I think that matriarchal role is really something to carry on forward. And you don't necessarily have to be first generation. And that's great if you are, because clearly you're going to be more connected. But over time in the future, I see this growing as something where, you know, there's little seeds just planted. And so just holding on to those seeds that you get and never forgetting who you are, and also paying respect and homage to those people who, like, you know, my grandmas, they were definitely matriarchs in my family. So I definitely appreciate all the things that they did to show us, like, this is how, you know, this is how you do it in America. And then this is also how, you know, but you also bring in their culture. Like my grandma used to make tortillas like from scratch.
Wow.
Oh, they were so good. She would like make their flour ones, and then she'd put butter on them, roll them up, and then she'd hand them out to the 50 grandchildren that she had lined up in the house. 4-bedroom house, but like 1,600 square feet, like in La Puente, right?
Yes.
So it's in all the grandkids are just running amok, and she's just sitting there with her little coffee, like coffee, her 5th coffee probably, and just like watching the whole family play. All the tias are chit-chatting, gossiping about the rest of the family on the table. You got the what is that? Why am I blanking? The Last Supper.
Oh my gosh.
The Last Supper hanging over the dinner table. And
yes. Or that one spirit, the guardian angel for the children. And I forget what it is, but it's like a picture, and there's an guardian angel, and there's these 2 kids, a boy and a girl, and they're like crossing a bridge or something. My grandma had that. Yeah. Both of them.
Yeah. So like little things like that is my culture. You know, that is my roots. And so anybody like who feels like me, where you're 2nd, even 3rd generation, like you still are very much Latina. You still are very much part of our culture, and feeling like, you know, you don't belong because you don't speak the language, or maybe you're not as immersed. But that's also when you get older, like you can take that time to dive deeper. I read a lot of books. Like I said, I took a lot of trips to Mexico. And if you have aunts around, or uncles or primas that are older than you, like you can pick their brain, and just, it also is a little bit on us, you know, to really bring that forward and express it. So I think that's something that makes me proud, is that I want to learn more.
Yeah, that's great. I think for me, like you said, not being fully enveloped into that culture, because we had a mix of doing it in America. And yeah, in the beginning, I was also pretty embarrassed about it. I think especially my Spanish, because Spanish was my first language, but it was great. And I remember speaking it when I was younger, and I would speak it so fluent. And then as I get older, just simply because at home we didn't speak Spanish. We were an English first household. It's just like my parents had a business, that we were in school. It's just English was the dominating language. And also because my mom didn't want us in like ESL classes, because then they they held you back. Like it was seen as like a demerit almost, whereas, well, you're not smart like the rest of the kids, so you're going to be in ESL, even though the only thing that meant was that English was not your first language.
Yeah. Right. And didn't mean that they couldn't understand what they were learning. They just would separate them.
Yeah. And so there was such a like derogatory, I guess, meaning and feeling towards being ESL. And so my mom especially, did not want us to have that experience. And so I started losing the Spanish language as I grew up. And I mean, I would still try to speak it every now and then, because my grandparents all speak Spanish, not too much English. And people would call, I guess, like the no sabo, like back then it was
Mm-hmm.
bocha, or I don't know what the male version of it is, but like the whitewash. And I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. I'm like, yeah, but I'm still trying.
Yeah.
And for a while, I wouldn't be hesitant to speak Spanish simply because I was like, I don't want to be called that. Like,
Right.
I'm trying, and they're diminishing how I'm like trying, saying it's not good enough. And I think after a while, you just are like, screw it. I'm just going to keep going and keep trying. The best I can do is keep trying. And the worst I can do is not do anything about it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm like, okay, I'm just going to be speaking my broken Spanglish and my words that I don't know. And then I learned Italian when I was studying abroad. So then sometimes I'll throw an Italian word and I'm like, what the heck is this word? I don't even know this word. Like, why is it here?
I love it. I know when we went to Italy, I was like, how do you say bathroom? And it's like similar to the way you say bathroom in Spanish.
Yes. It's so similar.
Or there's even my husband, he learned, and my brother too. My brother speaks more Spanish than I do, but that's because he learned it in high school.
Oh, okay.
He was on the college track, which I clearly wasn't. But he learned it. And then his partner, it was so important for him to really be able to talk to his partner's family. So he really made it a point to basically be vulnerable and put himself in feeling like he might be judged and made fun of because he doesn't speak it fluently. And I don't want to speak for him, but I'm sure maybe that did happen where he felt like you did, right? Like pretty insecure and, oh, everybody's going to judge me and I'm going to be made fun of. So it's like, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And I think that is the point of this talk right now is like some people are definitely in the middle. And even if you have an accent, you're first generation, then there's like also insecurities with that too, right? And then there's the people who are us, right? Or actually you, I would say you, because you could speak it, right? But you were fluent at one time.
Yeah.
And then there's me who doesn't speak Spanish, but also is very much whitewashed growing up and still wanting to dive deeper into the culture, right? So I'm trying to go backwards, and then it's this far end on, so I would say I'm on the right, and then the other end is where you're first generation, or maybe you just got here, right? And you're just trying to learn English, trying to acclimate, and then now you feel, oh, now I got to get to the other side. So and then the middle still feels all messed up.
Yeah. It's that saying, what are they? Ni de aquí, ni de allá. Like, not from here, not from there. Like, forever in this limbo. But I think, like you said, there's beauty in the limbo because I'm very happy that we grew up here. I think we had a lot of opportunities. My parents took a lot of those opportunities that America provided and were able to excel through that. But they added their own twist to it. They added in the Mexican culture in it. And so there were certain things, traditions that we carried on with us, like our Christmas, like you said, the tamales. We didn't make the tamales like a family thing, but my grandma did. And we always had tamales at Christmas, at Thanksgiving. We were always getting together for these like big family reunions. Growing up, my dad we call them carne asadas, like barbecues.
Oh yeah, those are the best.
Yeah, and it was just like my dad's friends, and he played soccer, so it was like the soccer team friends that they were all hanging out like every weekend, and that was just the thing that you did. It was like bringing the community together through that culture of what you would traditionally do in Mexico. You gather, you eat, you drink, you have good times, and enjoy each other's presence.
Right. Yeah. I think that's something that both of my mom and dad's side of the family, both of my grandparents stayed in the same neighborhood for 100 billion years and like 30 minutes outside of LA. And so they didn't move. So the same house that my parents were raised in, that's the same house I got to like also be raised in, but as a grandkid. So I just think back like how many freaking neighbors would be passing by through the holidays, or like they'd be like, something's going on over at the Castro's house, or something's going over at the Solis family house. And then the neighbors start coming over and they're like the carne asadas, right? And they're like, ooh, we're going to eat. And then both families were like, yeah, come here, mingle and stuff. And so on top of the cousins and all the tias and the tios and the extended family and stuff. So I feel like that is something that is such an authentic cultural thing that most Americans don't understand. And also I do appreciate, because my grandma and my grandpa's, the only one that had family here was my mom's mom, where she had sisters that also came with her. She was the first one to like the satellite one. And once one comes in, they're like, hey, come over here. So she helped all her sisters come over too. I take that back. I think she had one other sister that was here before her, but basically she was the one that had like her sisters around. I don't think she didn't, or she had a brother, but I think he passed away. But my grandpa's, and my grandpa and my other grandma, the one from Nicaragua, they didn't have any siblings here. So it was just them. They were the only ones. Everybody else was still back in their homeland.
Yeah.
So once in a while they would have the family fly in and visit and stuff like that. But so what I seen was that even though they didn't have that family, the community became their family. I mean, there's like extended family that I call family, but they're like neighbors that live like a block around the corner or something. And so I think that's one of the beautiful essences of our culture. And so when I go back to Mexico and I do see the family in Mexico, I'm like, oh shit, no wonder this is where they all, it's like doors open. I don't care how big the house is.
Yes.
Well, there's a backyard. We can set up shop outside. Like the house is not really an issue. It's like everybody come on in. And so I think that's one of the things that to me is also part of that Latina empowerment, that culture, that is like, it's always welcoming.
Yes.
Love that.
Yeah. Oftentimes in Mexico, it feels like they would give you the shirt off their backs to help. Even if they had like little to nothing, they would still make sure that you're fed, clothed, taken care of. Like it's crazy. And I do think we need more of that here.
Right.
I think one of the biggest differences that I noticed and maybe it's not everywhere in the US, maybe it's just a California thing, but I think here there is more of a sense of individualism and people just look out for themselves and that's like where it ends. They don't really look too far beyond. And so I think now, and I think especially with the younger generations, people being more proud, as more of us are more proud of our culture and our backgrounds and our heritage and where we come from, I think we can bring lessons from those and implement it into the space that we're currently in, because I think overall America could benefit from something that is a bit more communal, looking after your neighbors, after your immediate family, extended family, your friends, whoever it is, just being kind and making sure that we're all taken care of instead of, well, I'm taken care of. It doesn't matter to me what anybody else is going on in their lives. Like they'll handle it. But in our culture, it's more, I'm good. Let me also make sure somebody else is good too. Or even when I'm not that great, it could be worse. People probably have it worse than I am. And I'm still thankful for what I have. And therefore I can still help other people.
Yeah, I do love that. And that's one of the things that I've always loved when I visited Mexico, and just seeing how the community comes together and the culture and the food. Food's amazing. I
love the food. Top tier.
Yeah.
I think probably one of the best.
So how do you, like, what are the couple things that you do to blend in, to bring out your culture that you would say you do, like on not a daily basis, but, on a routine basis?
Yeah, I think I do it a couple ways. For sure, through a little bit more on my spirituality side and trying to connect to some of the more like indigenous practices of like smoke cleanses, like energetic cleanses, things like that. Because I do think it runs pretty heavily in my family, probably more from my grandma's side, because I think she has more of the native side than my grandpa's side is a little bit more like Spaniard. So through the spirituality side, definitely through the food. I mean, it's what I know best. So naturally, I'm going to cook towards Mexican types of foods and experimenting with that stuff. Definitely the spices for sure. That's like my go-to. The sauce. I'm like, okay, let's just make one and we'll have it in the fridge for a week. I just throw it on anything.
Yeah.
And the music, I think. Music, I don't know. I just love Spanish music. It just hits different. I don't know how to explain it. Yeah, the beats, the lyrics, like the way that it feels, the way that it sounds. It's just so, I mean, obviously there's sad love songs, but it's so uplifting. Just the beats are very energetic. And then through my fashion, I'm inspired by the Mexican fashion, like I forget what they call it, the shirts with the embroidery, the makeup. I love having my hoop earrings on. I'm like, I remember because growing up in La Puente, and for a while I was like, well, you can't wear your hoop earrings because you look like a chola. And that was something that you're not supposed to do.
Yeah, you're going to get beat down walking down the street.
Yes. And so that was something that I carried with me for so long. And then finally now being in this place and age in San Diego, and I'm like, I'm going to bring my hoop earrings. Like, I just want to have them now. I want to wear them with pride.
Right. So now they do represent a part of our culture, and it's not a negative thing as it was back then, because back in the 90s and 80s, it was like gangs were crazy, right?
Yeah. So, and the war on crimes and all these things. And it was just, it was just different times. And now I feel like with the copy and paste or like the clean aesthetic, like now I'm like, oh, now it's cool to have the fashion that we had way back then.
Right. I know. I'm like, I should bring out my high school pictures of my daughters. I'm like, look, I'm cool now.
I'm the real OG.
Yeah. I got my eyebrows are drawn on.
I swear, I'm pretty sure I ruined my eyebrows from how like thin they were. Now I can't get them to shape right.
Right. I mean, I'm sure it's going to come back in style. Yeah. I feel like, I think for me too, the cooking, but a lot of it is because I feel like I had to learn how to cook a lot because my mom, she made food every day. And mostly Mexican food, but she was like, this is my domain. This is my kitchen. And then when I moved out and had kids, I didn't know how to cook. So I had to learn how to cook. So I would go and get my little cookbooks and things like that. So I feel like I taught myself how to cook Mexican food, but it's also because grew up. So I knew this is what you make. Like, how do you make Spanish rice and carne asada and carnitas and all that stuff. So I feel like I've done pretty well with it.
Yeah.
My husband's even, look at you. Because when I first met you, bless your heart. And just the traditional stuff like making the tamales, making pozole, stuff like that, making salsas from scratch. I love. So good.
Amazing.
Yes, from scratch is like amazing. It's so fresh. And then I think one of the things that I love, and this is something that now as a mother I see with my kids, they decorate their own rooms and stuff. And I don't raise my kids Catholic. I was raised Catholic, but I clearly wasn't Catholic diehard. I wasn't even, well, I was baptized, but I didn't have my first communion and all that fun stuff. But we go to church here and there. We were like the Easter,
Yes,
the holiday passerby Catholics. But I was always drawn to the Virgin Mary naturally at a very young age. And my grandmas were both very much into the Virgin Mary and all the saints and all that stuff. So one of the things that I wear every day is my Virgin Mary necklace. But for me, I wear it not to represent Catholicism, but to represent what we know of now. And now that I dove deeper into like how the Virgin Mary got into our culture, but she basically replaced another goddess. And that goddess had this, I'm blanking on the name. I can hopefully put it in the show descriptions, but there's a goddess who was very similar to the Virgin Mary. And so just understanding that there were these two, I guess, women that were goddesses in a sense. And so they basically transferred that original Azteca queen into the Virgin Mary. And so just knowing and understanding like the Virgin Mary represents so many different things. It's not just being Catholic. For me, it just represents that unfortunately this poor woman, Mary, has been placed in different indigenous cultures and religions and been swapped out for something else that is very similar. So my daughters, they're like, I want to wear one too. So it's so cute. Yeah. So we actually went to Mexico City. When we went to Mexico City, we went and got them their little medallas. And then in the little spot where the Virgin Mary appeared and all that fun stuff. So that was really nice. But the other thing that they like to do is they'll bring out the Virgin Mary in their little room. So they have a little, like their little rosary, and then they have their little Virgin Mary. And then even the other day, my son went to the flea market, and he doesn't live with us, but he has his own little roommates and stuff, and he has his own room. And so he bought like the old school, like shit that you would see in your grandma and grandpa's houses, right? Like the saints and the Mary and the Jesus and yeah. So just looking at that and be like, that is our culture. It's not so much about Catholicism, and I'm not hating on Catholicism. Like everybody can, whatever gets you to be a great human being and spirituality and to that point. But I think for the Latino community, there is that there. It's part of your grandma or your grandpa's or ancestors in the background. That was what they were forced to believe in a sense and take on. But understanding the roots of that is what made me feel like I can look at the Virgin Mary and look at it, and that makes me proud because to me it stands up for more than just, Catholicism. And then I think the other thing is like I named my dog Frida after Frida Kahlo. Playing music in the background while I'm cooking, listening to nostalgic songs growing up, even though I don't know what the hell they're saying. Dude, there's this guy on TikTok where he will sing the song in English.
Oh, nice.
Like the popular songs. Yes. And I'm like, now I know what they mean. And I'll be singing to it too. And I don't even know what the hell I'm saying. But now I know if I watch that guy. So it's just, I feel like it's one of those things, like if you want to go for it and you're going to be judged along the way no matter what. So, really just embracing that culture and whatever that feels like for you and taking that time to tap in. I think even spirituality too. Clearly I've gone on dumpster dives with that. And so I bring that out in my business. I bring that out in my spiritual teachings and my healings and things like that. That is very much something that I've had to learn again. and immerse myself into. But now that I know about it, I don't feel like I'm appropriating it because I'm really trying to get back to my roots.
Yeah.
And just knowing that my parents made a good decision in that sense on trying to support us in this American world that we live in this little land of ours. I'm like feeling certain things about that right now. But anyways, parents, we just do what we can. And so times change, seasons, generations change. And so now I feel like we're starting to come to these generations that like, wait a minute, who in the fuck are we? Because even if we try to acclimate and be so American, we're still not accepted. Yeah. You know what? Let me just go back and retrace the steps of the generations behind us and go back and peel the onion on things. And at the end of the day, you're going to come out and make it however it wants to look.
Yes. Yeah. Because even like how you said, how back then there was that divide. And I think I remember even specifically in high school, immigration has just always been a topic. And thinking about it now, growing up in Riverside, if you're from Riverside or know about it, you know what I'm talking about. But it was such a big topic for a while. We had the walkouts and everything. Yeah. And I remember, it wasn't in high school. It wasn't my high school, but we did have the walkouts. But at my sister's middle school, I think my parents ended up having to pick her up early to get her out of school because it's just all the kids were in disarray. Right. And it was mostly white kids. All of the white kids they were all outside for recess. It was like the dodgeball area. And they got on one side of the lines where the dodgeball line was. And they all congregated there, and then there was like Mexicans on the other side, and they're like, you can't pass this line, this is the border, you're not welcome here, blah blah blah. And I was just thinking, like, it's so funny how back then in the 80s and the 90s, our parents didn't, oftentimes many of us, they didn't teach us like the culture, the language, whatever, right, for sure protection. And then we like continue on, and then it comes up again as another topic of, we get othered. And then we come back to today in this day and age, and again, immigration is such a hot topic, and to the point where literally ICE is being deployed and just rounding up whoever they can to take them simply because they look other. And it's, what do you do? Yeah. How we're in this constant fight of showing ourselves for who we are and wanting to be accepted while being in this land, and still we're not accepted. And so the only way I think to fight back is just to be who we are. Right. And whether they accept it or not, just being unapologetic, because so long as we're not hurting anybody else, there's no harm in it. Let us be Mexican, let us be Nicaraguan, let us bring in our cultures. There's nothing in the Constitution, in the history, whatever these people have against us, there's nothing bad in what we're doing. Yeah. We're just bringing in hope and happiness and joy in the way that we know how to share it, through carne asadas, through our art, through everything, whatever we do. Through the lowriders,
through the makeup, through the hairs, like all the things.
Yes. I want to listen to my gangster rap sometimes. Okay. Leave me alone.
Yeah. I have an interesting playlist. It'll be like gangster rap, then some like yoga shit, and then some sound bowls. It's like this random Spotify thing. Spotify's like, who is this person? I can't even pick her next mix. So we hope that this hopefully inspired you to tap into your own authenticity and bring in that Latina power back, and like taking the time to, ask your questions like, what does Latina empowerment mean to me, personally? And how do you balance the ancient traditions or the old heritage with what's going to come forward? And if you don't have kids, or you do have kids, like, how's that going to look? And how you're going to express it through your fur babies, right? Like, you could still express it in your own ways. And then, just also claiming it and being proud of it. And even, like we said, I think we both talked about our experiences in either speaking Spanish and not speaking Spanish, or being in the middle. No matter what, it's just be proud of who you are. And people are going to hate. And that's just our natural, unfortunately, human tendencies. But just remember, you have the blood that runs in you, and be grateful and proud of it. One of the things that I was thinking about as you were talking about was my grandpas, they all picked fruit when they came to the United States, whether they were, even the grandpa that was born here, he picked fruit too. So he picked fruit up in Northern California. Actually, yeah, Northern California. The other grandpa started out in Texas, worked his way up into Wyoming and all that stuff. And then I don't know how he got back to California. But it's even thinking about that fruit, when I see those fruit workers, or the pickers, I'm sorry, that they show sometimes in Northern California. And I'm like, that was my grandpa's one. Mm-hmm. And that's what got them here. If they didn't come here and have a job that was able to get them into the door of the United States, then I would not be here. So it's even just like looking at that fruit and just being like, remembering if you did have grandparents, that was their path, and being proud of it. And then also looking at your food today and being like, they're people who this was their hopes and their dreams is to get here. And that was that path. So even looking at your food and being grateful, because somebody who has brown hands definitely picked that.
Yeah, more than likely.
Yeah. Do you have anything else to add?
Que viva Mexico, cabrones.
Yes. Yes, I could do that.
No, I think you said it all. I think we covered so much. Yeah, just be your true authentic self and embrace your heritage and your culture. Like, there's so much beauty that comes with it. So live it up.
Right. All right, we are going to wrap this up. So thank you for tuning in, and don't forget to leave some comments, heart and share. And if you have any ideas on any topics around just more cultural Latina or Latino things that you would like us to dive deeper on, or maybe do more research on, especially if you're interested in like history and stuff like that, like I'm down for that. But yeah, thank you for joining with us today.
Yes, thanks for joining, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Espiritu Coffee Chats.
We hope you enjoyed our conversation and found a little inspiration to take with you.
If you loved what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform.
And stay connected with us on social media for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and more.
Until next time, keep the spirit alive and the coffee brewing. Cheers! Ow, ow, ow.